Welcome to Teaching Orchestra. In this episode, I'm going over how I teach Winter Solstice by Todd Parrish. In my last video, I went over the anchor note patterns, and if you do those exercises and your students learn them, they're going to learn about 80% of the eighth notes in Winter Solstice. In fact, if you just learn the B-A-B patterns, you'll be at about 50% of that 80%, so that'll get you through a lot. But depending on how much time you have to teach them, you may not get to all these patterns, and that's okay. Like if you're a region clinician and you've only got 6 hours and you got to work on 2 other pieces, you may not get into all of these. But if you're spending time to really perfect this for your competition or spring concert, and you really want to perfect this, you can go over these fundamental patterns with your students to help them learn it faster. You know, sometimes you get the best of intentions and you're coming into your performance and you just run out of time, and it happens. You know, you just don't have time to put in that extra 15% of left-hand work, and then the last 5% I'm going to discuss in my next video. But if you do this along with my previous video, it'll get you 95% of the way there. And actually the difference between 80% and 95% is huge in music. In an academic class, it's just the difference between a B- and an A. And according to Pareto and his 80-20 principle, at least according to the self-help gurus, it's just wasted effort. But I'm going to play for you an experiment that a colleague of mine showed his parents at a concert. He had them go through the music and circle 1 out of 10 notes and then have them intentionally miss the note. And it sounds like this. So that's what a 90% sounds like in music. Now here's closer to 100%. It's a big difference, right? So if you have time to teach them the fundamental patterns, it will certainly make some sections in Winter Solstice a lot cleaner. Okay, if this were a canon or a round, you'd know how to teach it, right? You just figure out where the canon started in each part and have each section start in a different measure so that it corresponds to the beginning of the canon. And you just rehearse them homogeneously, right? And this rehearsal technique is not identically possible in Winter Solstice because Winter Solstice is not a canon, nor is it a round. But there are measures that are part of the glue that holds this piece together. And just to show you what I'm talking about, because you probably didn't learn about the glue in your arranging classes back in undergrad, but the glue is the pad or the sustain notes and the lead voice. Like in measure 61, we've got the first violins as part of the pad. They're just maintaining that E minor. I would say this is also kind of part of the pad. This is just like the rhythm, the rhythmic motif, and this is your melody. This is your lead voice. So this figure right here does repeat itself, and it does carry through to different voices. So if we can teach these measures at the same time, we can learn the lead voice a lot faster. These measures rotate about in the orchestration, and you can practice them homogenously, and your students will be ready for them when they arise, except for the poor basses, except right here, 31, 32, that's it. Also, by the way, they get none of the anchor notes at all. They just get to play the first 2 along with the cellos, but they don't get anything in the rests. But that's okay, because for the basses and in many of my teaching companions, they might actually enjoy playing the teaching companion more than the original work because they get to play more notes. And for your developing bass players, it will give them the technique to get better and improve over time. And for your overachievers, it's going to challenge them. So they're getting parts that they're not getting in the original. In the teaching companions, the fundamental patterns are called slur exercises, and I use that for the students because it's a better descriptor for them. The fundamental patterns they might not make that connection to, and there are 8 of them. Most of the time they're a measure long, and I repeat them just so they can have some practice, but once you get towards the end of them, The slur exercise 7 and 8, they span 2 measures. In all of these patterns, they bounce around in the first violins, the second violins, the viols, and the cellos, and occasionally the basses that one time. And you can save time by teaching them all at once rather than stop the whole orchestra, work with a single section while everybody else sits, and then you play, oh, now the second violins can't play it, stop the whole orchestra. That's going to waste a lot of time. And one of the goals in your rehearsal should be to have the students playing as much as possible, because that's why they joined orchestra, right? To play, not to sit around while the violas figure out their parts. So it's good to involve everyone. And with a lot of my teaching companions, you don't really need the teaching companion because a lot of it's just rote technique as it applies to your concert music. And you just watch the videos and write down the exercises and then they learn them by rote. But for here, it's really not the case because there's a lot of patterns and the patterns are so specific. But if you get salty about that and you're like, I gotta buy the teaching companion, don't. If your school district or principal or whoever pays for stuff around your place, and hopefully you've got some kind of orchestra budget, but if they can't cover the $10 to pay for my time to create these PDFs, and believe me, this took some time, that's fine. Just send me an email at teachingorchestra@gmail.com, and I'll send it to you for free. I don't want there to be a barrier to you and your students to get them what they need to be successful, and I don't mind doing it. Trust me, I give out more teaching companions for free than I sell, so don't feel bad about asking. In my next video, I'm going to go over unstructured class time. What? Unstructured class time? That sounds dangerous. Yeah, it can be, but probably not if you control the environment. And with the anchor notes, we learned about 80% of the left-hand technique, and with the fundamental patterns, another 15%. So there's 5% left, according to my math. And it's orchestra teacher math, so maybe it's not right. But you can achieve the last 5% through sectionals, or you can use unstructured class time to teach students independence, and that's going to be the topic of my next video, so I hope to see you then.